Welcome back to G Fun Facts Online. Today, we are stripping away the romanticism of the traveling scholar to look at the hard, cold machinery of the global knowledge economy. We are going to talk about the economics of scientific mobility. Let's start with a mental image. Picture a quiet corridor in a research institute in Heidelberg. You have a Portuguese bioengineer working alongside a Korean data scientist. They are funded by money from Brussels, and they are trying to solve a protein folding problem that could revolutionize how we deliver drugs to the human body. Now, it is easy to look at that and just see science happening, but if you look closer, you are seeing a microscopic transaction in a massive global economy of intellect. That collaboration is the visible pulse of scientific mobility. It has evolved from an old academic rite of passage into a cornerstone of modern economic strategy. For centuries, the wandering scholar was a solitary figure, moving from Bologna to Oxford in search of truth. Today, that wanderer is a unit of human capital, a vector for innovation diffusion, and a specific line item in multi-billion euro budgets. This is a discipline that involves labor market friction, agglomeration effects, and the balance of payments between nations. To understand how this machine works, we have to look at its biggest engine, the European Union's Erasmus Plus program. This is arguably the most successful experiment in mass intellectual migration in history. Originally conceived in 1987 just for student exchanges, it has mutated into a comprehensive framework for education, training, and sport. And the money involved tells you exactly how important the EU thinks this is. The budget for the 2021 to 2027 cycle was set at over 26.2 billion euro. That is nearly double the previous period. This is not charity. It is venture capital. The European Commission operates on the belief that for every euro invested, there is a significant return in employability and skills acquisition. The economic logic here is rooted in human capital theory. By taking students and staff and dropping them into different pedagogical systems and cultures, you increase the stock of competencies in the labor force. We have data from 2019 showing that Erasmus graduates had an unemployment rate 23% lower than their non-mobile peers 5 years after graduation. In an economy driven by soft skills, like adaptability and cross-cultural communication, this mobility is a high-intensity training ground that domestic education simply cannot replicate. There is also the concept of agglomeration economies. In urban economics, agglomeration describes the benefits firms get by being near each other. In science, this creates knowledge clusters. Erasmus Plus funds the flow of personnel to create an artificial density. A physicist in a small rural university can plug into a high-energy cluster at CERN. This reduces the distance to the frontier for peripheral institutions, theoretically allowing the entire Eurozone to converge toward higher productivity. However, the current program has had to adjust for a new variable: inclusion. Previous iterations were criticized as subsidies for the middle class, the Prosecco and Ryanair generation. The current mandate includes top-ups for lower socioeconomic backgrounds. The economic argument here is allocative efficiency. Talent is distributed randomly across the population, but opportunity is not. If you lower the financial barriers, you ensure the most capable minds participate in the knowledge economy, not just the wealthiest. Now, while Erasmus Plus handles the mass market of undergraduates, the luxury segment is managed by the Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions, or MSCA. With a budget of 6.6 billion euro, this is the gold standard for PhD candidates and postdoctoral researchers. Economically, moving a postdoc is different from moving an undergrad. An undergrad moves to learn. A researcher moves to produce. When a top-tier researcher moves from a lab at MIT to a lab in Munich, they bring tacit knowledge. This is the know-how that you cannot write down in a patent or a journal article. It is the intuitive grasp of experimental design and networks of trust. Economists call these knowledge spillovers. Studies show that MSCA fellows produce publications with higher citation impacts than their non-mobile peers, and the host institutions get a productivity bump. It confirms the Schumpeterian view of economic growth. Innovation is the driver, and mobile scientists are the bees pollinating the industrial landscape. There is also a push for intersectoral mobility, moving researchers from academia to industry. The ivory tower is an economic inefficiency. Programs like MSCA subsidize placing PhDs in companies to reduce frictional unemployment and inject scientific rigor into corporate R&D. For a pharmaceutical giant or an automotive startup, hosting a mobile researcher is cheaper and less risky than acquiring a smaller company to get talent. However, the narrative that everyone benefits collapses when we look at the directional flows of this capital. We have to talk about brain drain. Historically, the flow was unidirectional, from the periphery to the core, from the global south to the global north. For the sending country, this is a fiscal loss. The state pays for the education, but another government collects the tax revenue on the future earnings. Recent data from the Open Society Foundations in 2024 suggests that for the global south, brain drain is still the reality. Despite talk of brain circulation, the net flow of top talent is still toward the global north. Circulation often only happens among elite nations, leaving developing nations in a deficit. Proponents of brain circulation argue that the diaspora is an asset. They point to network externalities. Expatriate scientists send back remittances, not just money, but knowledge remittances. They build bridges. An Indian scientist in Silicon Valley is more likely to outsource R&D to Bangalore. Then there is the boomerang effect, where scientists return mid-career with better skills. Countries like China and India have pivoted to brain retention and re-attraction strategies. China's 1,000 Talents Plan was effectively a bidding war for its own diaspora, offering salaries that matched Western standards. The economic lesson is that you cannot legislate against brain drain, you can only out-invest it. No discussion on this topic is complete without addressing Brexit. The UK's withdrawal from the EU provided a natural experiment on what happens when you erect barriers in a frictionless market. Prior to 2020, the UK was a net importer of scientific talent. The end of freedom of movement introduced transaction costs, visas, healthcare surcharges, and uncertainty. The economic impact was a softness in recruitment and a plummet in EU student numbers, which hit the export revenue of UK universities hard. More critically, the uncertainty over the Horizon Europe funding program meant UK scientists were excluded from leading pan-European consortia. Although the UK reassociated with Horizon Europe in 2024, the lost years demonstrated path dependence. Once a network is broken, it is expensive to rebuild. Brexit proved that scientific mobility relies on the institutional and legal infrastructure that makes movement risk-free. We also have to address the green dilemma. We believe mobility is good for the economy, but physical mobility is bad for the planet. The carbon footprint of international conferences and exchanges is massive. The 2021 to 2027 Erasmus Plus program introduced green travel incentives, but the real tension is between productivity and sustainability. Does a Zoom call generate the same economic value as a physical meeting? Most research says no. The water cooler effect, spontaneous idea generation, requires physical proximity. Trust is harder to mint virtually. We are likely moving toward a hybrid model. Low-value mobility, like administrative meetings, moves online. High-value mobility, like long-term research stays, remains physical but becomes more expensive. We risk creating a two-tier system, a wealthy elite that flies, and a virtual class that stays behind screens. Looking ahead to 2030, the geopolitics of science are shifting. The era of a unipolar scientific world dominated by the US is over. We are seeing the rise of Asian hubs. Intra-Asian mobility is exploding, with students choosing Japan, South Korea, China, or Singapore over the West. Economically, this fragments the global market into regional trading blocks of intelligence. Furthermore, science is increasingly viewed through the lens of national security. The US and EU are tightening scrutiny on researchers from strategic rivals in fields like AI and quantum computing. This introduces protectionism. While it might serve security goals, standard economic theory predicts it will lower global innovation rates. If the best AI researcher cannot work in Silicon Valley due to visa restrictions, global development slows. This scientific decoupling could cost trillions in unrealized GDP. To conclude, the economics of scientific mobility is a story about the tension between flow and friction. Investments like Erasmus Plus are designed to reduce friction because the free flow of minds creates wealth. The data supports this. Mobile scientists are more productive, and mobile ideas solve problems faster. The return on investment is positive, but inequalities, climate change, and geopolitical rivalry threaten to clog these arteries. The task for policymakers is to design smart mobility systems that mitigate brain drain, balance carbon costs, and maintain openness. In a knowledge economy, stillness is stagnation. The cost of mobility is high, but the cost of immobility, of a world where ideas stop crossing borders, is a price no modern economy can afford to pay. Thanks for listening to Fun Facts Online.